theory.
You're an M&M. There's no point in wondering where your pockets are. Tasting smooth, creamy milk, chocolate center. You're an M&M. It's alright. There's no sense in wondering where your pockets are. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. Don't worry, they say hi. Solid milk chocolate M&M's. I love being on TV when you're an M&M. Don't worry, it's alright. Solid milk chocolate M&M's. Don't worry, get in a ball. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. Do you think bite-sized candies? Milk chocolate. Do you think bite-sized candies? Creamy milk chocolate. Do you think bite-sized candies? No one almond chocolate. Do you think bite-sized candies? Chocolate center. Milk chocolate. You're an M&M. There's no point in wondering where your pockets are. Only M&M's candies. You're an M&M. It's alright. There's no sense in wondering where your ear holes are. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. So it's that kind of party. Dark chocolate, darkly seen. So it's that kind of party. When you're an M&M. 13 more hours. Oh no. Solid milk chocolate. Aye. 13 more hours. Oh no. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. Do you think bite-sized candies? Milk chocolate. Bite-sized candies. Creamy milk chocolate. Milk chocolate. Do you think bite-sized candies? M&M's. Almond chocolate. Do you think bite-sized candies? Chocolate center. When you're an M&M. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. Creamy milk chocolate. Milk chocolate. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. Milk chocolate melts in your mouth. They say hi when you're an M&M.
All the M&Ms you could want. With peanuts or plain.
Might wonder. Might wonder. You're an M&M. 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 You're an M&M.
Milk chocolate. Bite-sized cat chocolate center. Milk chocolate. Bite-sized cat chocolate center. The M&M's can only all new M's. The M&M's can bite-sized candies. M's. The M&M's can only all new M's. The M&M's can.
I'd say that's a wrap.
This podcast is hosted on podhome.fm, the most modern podcast hosting platform. Podhome offers unlimited episodes and podcasts, and unlimited use of Podhome AI, which generates transcripts, clips, chapters, title suggestions, show notes, and much more. And all of that for just $15.99 a month or $185 per year. That's a steal. So go to podhome.fm and start your 30-day trial now. And enjoy the show with Joe.
Island Studios, deep in the bowels of Southwest Texas. It's the Joe Rooz Show. The show where we talk about anything and everything. Where nothing is sacred, nothing is watered down, and nothing is PC.
Alrighty, hey folks, this is Joe Rooz, and it is great to be with you once again, transmitting live at the Asylum, and of course, as always, doing the very best we can to bring you the best quality talk radio we can muster, without all the bluster. Welcome to the Joe Rooz Show. All right, little kerfluffle there at the start. Our banner was on a loop, forgot to turn it off, so sorry about that. But that's what happens when you do live shows. So things like these take place. All right. Well, we've got a show for you tonight. Question. Important question. Why do so many modern movies, shows, and stories feel empty? My guest tonight is Russell Anders, and we're going to be diving into storytelling, cyberpunk fiction, AI, creativity, whether artificial intelligence can ever truly replace human imagination. We're going to be talking about the power stories have over culture, why most writers never finish their work, and the dangerous difference between consuming stories passively and consuming them intentionally. But, of course, as always, before we get into it, we are going to take care of some of the usual housekeeping stuff. So if you would, please head over to our website, joerooz.com. That's joerooz.com. And when you get over there, look for the contact form. It's hidden up there in that little pancake in the upper right corner of your screen. Open that thing up, the web form, fire us off a message. Let us know whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your mind, any questions, comments, cares, or concerns that you might have. Maybe you have a complaint. I mean, honestly, you really shouldn't have any complaints at all, but you might. And if you do, send it on over to us, and of course, we'll address it promptly. And then maybe you have a suggestion for a guest or maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys. Now, if you're anything like me, you don't like to use the web form because of the stupid CAPTCHA thing. Drives me nuts. Email us directly then. info@joerooz.com. That's info@joerooz.com. And then also another great idea is you can use the comment section down below if you're watching on Rumble, if you're watching on YouTube. Great place to do that. Not watch. You should be watching on Rumble, not YouTube, but you know what I mean. Good place to leave a comment on either one of them. All right? All right. So plenty of ways to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you guys and get your feedback on it, so let us know what you are thinking. Also, please don't forget that this is a live show, weeknight, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And also, we have our Sunday show every Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Central Time as well. So plenty of places for you to check us out. Please do that and let us know what you think. If you're listening on the audio, please don't forget to leave us a review or something nice to say on Apple Podcasts or wherever platform it is that you're listening to us on. And don't forget, you can also get the live audio as well, streaming through our website and streaming through the modern Podcast 2.0 apps like Podhomes or Podcast Guru, Fountain.fm, True Fans, not only fans, True Fans. Plenty of places to check out the live audio, so check them out. Love to hear from you guys there as well. Also, incredibly important is the algorithm. Algorithm is the key. You need to like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, your family, and your followers. That way you'll help to spread the joy, the love, the mirth. Word of the day, mirth. Spread it all along with your family and friends. It's important to us to do that. And also, look, even if you don't like somebody, share the show with them too, because then my stuff will end up in their feed all the time and you really piss them off. So plenty of ways to do it, all right? So like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, your family, and your followers. Really, really would appreciate that. All right. Now, tonight's guest is a courtesy of Podmatch. Podmatch. What is Podmatch? Podmatch is Tinder for podcasters. Basically what it is. Host puts up a profile, guest puts up a profile, algorithm, keyword, puts them all together, and then you get to match or pass. And our guest tonight is being brought to us through that exact process. But more seriously, Podmatch, basically, most podcast guests and hosts spend hours researching connections, coordinating interviews, and working on administrative tasks while really only spending about 10% of their time on what really matters, and that's bringing you, the audience, impactful podcast episodes. What Podmatch does is it enables the guest and the host to reclaim that time through automations and streamline processes so that they can focus on creating content that really serves its listeners. So you want to find out more about it, just head over to podmatch.com/member/Joe. That's podmatch.com/member/Joe. That's the profile page for our show, and you can find out more about us, what we do here. And you never know, if you sign up through our site, you might end up being a guest on the show at some point, which we would love. It would be great if you have the guts to do it. All right, so we'll see. Anyway, podmatch.com/member/Joe, podmatch.com/member/Joe. Check it out, please. All right. Now, with that said, our guest tonight, Russell Anders, started telling stories at just 4 years old, interrupting his mom during bedtime to ask, well, then what happened? And what did your mom always tell you?
She very quickly stopped answering and instead came back with, well, I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
And then what happened on your end was that started you beginning to spin your own tales of dragons and dinosaurs and whatever your imagination was able to come up with. And that instinct really never left you. After decades of writing, studying the craft, scrapping 10-year manuscripts and rebuilding the process from the ground up, you began writing a book and is now published Daemones ex Machina. I know I said it wrong. Machina.
Very
Daemones
close.
ex Machina. I tried. I practiced with you before we started, so I need to, so I got it right the first time. There we go.
I can confirm that, yes.
All right. Daemones ex Machina. All right. Now, you're not here tonight just to talk about writing. You're here to break down why most modern stories fail, how storytelling shapes the way we think, and why writers and audiences have a responsibility in the stories that they create and consume. So, Russell, welcome to the show, man. I'm great. Really, really happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
That's the first time I did an interactive guest introduction, by the way.
Oh, very cool. I'm a trailblazer.
Yes, you are, sir. Yes, you are. So you've been writing stories since childhood.
Yeah.
What was it about storytelling that really grabbed you so early?
Honestly, so I know that my bedtime story ritual kind of was what it was only because my mother told me later. I have that happened so long ago, I have no direct recollection of it. But I think because she got me into that practice so early, it really shaped the way that my mind eventually developed, so that I had always been going in that direction for as long as I have any memory of it. Even if I didn't necessarily have an academic understanding of 3-act structure or setup and payoff and all that kind of thing, I still was looking at even like the cartoons I watched as a kid through a little bit more of a critical lens, because I was asking myself, well, what should happen? And sometimes I didn't particularly like what I was seeing. I thought that it could have been done better, or I could have done it better. So it was one of those things that got put in me so early that I don't know that it was really there was no eureka moment where I changed paths and said, this is for me. It's kind of always been that way.
I got you. And you actually answered my next question. I was going to ask you, after spending years of writing and studying before finally getting published, what kept you going through the whole thing?
I always loved telling stories. It would, like, every time I watch a movie or a show, it is really difficult for me to just do that. I'm always thinking about what the story is trying to do, what the point is, what the themes are, and how I might do it differently. And sometimes, honestly, that's a little annoying. Sometimes I wish I could just sit and watch it because it distracts me a little. But the fact that it's something that's always churning in the back of my head, I had a need to get this out. I'm not happy, deep down inside, unless I am creating some kind of story. So even if I wasn't getting published, and I always wanted to be published, but that was a goal. It was not the purpose of it, though. The purpose was the creation, and that's what kept me going.
I got you, and that makes a hell of a lot of sense. It really does. Now, can you walk me through the 10-year manuscript that never landed?
Yeah. So I think I was in, I don't know, I might have been in high school. I became just enamored of a particular fantasy series, and it inspired me. I was going to write epic fantasy. Mm-hmm. So I sat down and I had no idea what I was doing. I had written, I'd scrawled things, some short stories, but I had no real appreciation for the craft. I had no method. So I just sat down and I started to write, and I figured I'd write until I would finish.
Right.
And the reason why it took over a decade was because I rewrote it multiple times, but I only finished it once or twice because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no plan. I would just sit and I would write, and I would eventually write myself into a corner, and I had no idea where to go. I had no idea where it was going, and I got stuck. So I'd put it away for a while. I'd come back. I'd start over, and it was just again and again and again. It was a really good learning experience. And eventually I did have a finished manuscript, but because I had no plan, it was 600 pages, I think, which is really long for certainly for an inaugural book. I mean, just way past any reasonable word count. And I put it out there anyway. And obviously nobody took it. But what was really interesting was I never got a formed letter back. I always got a personal letter from the acquisitions editor saying, hey, you know, this isn't really for us. It's a bit big. However, you've got some chops, you know, whatever, you know, when you write something else, I'd like to see it. And that was about the best no I could possibly get. And I got multiple. When I talked to a professional editor at one point, he told me, he says, nobody doesn't get form letters. He says, this is actually encouraging. You're not actually making progress in getting this published, but do please keep at it because this is actually unheard of.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that you learned something from this. What exactly did you learn from the process?
I learned that writing advice is actually quite like all other life advice. It is never universally applicable. So, for example, when I started out, and then I did, like later on, I started to do some studying and whatnot. And I did what I think a lot of people do, which is I took some of my favorite authors and I saw what it was they were saying about the writing process because I liked their end result. So I wanted their path to how to get there. So for me at the time, one of those people was Stephen King, who is very clear on his feelings about the writing process and how outlines are the death of creativity and spontaneity. And you just sit down and you write, and then you just keep doing that until you have a finished first draft, and then you go back and you edit it brutally. And I discovered that absolutely does not work for me. I'm slower that way because I get lost, I get stuck. But I'm actually a very meticulous planner. And everything that he said, that kind of system would do to him, I believe, but it doesn't affect me the same way. It gives me a map. I can deviate from the path, but at least I have some general idea of where I'm going the whole time. And that keeps me going. It prevents me from writing gigantic bloat because I have a plan. And it's just, so I discovered that I needed to be much more critical in evaluating the efficacy of any advice that I saw, because it might not work for me.
I get you. I understand. Now the book was 600 pages. Was there any opportunity you could maybe split that into a series, or was it a story that had to be told in one shot?
I had talked about that with an editor, and we agreed it was possible. It would have been rough. But at the same time, at the end of the day, something that came up after after Daemones got published, I decided I was going to go back to fantasy. I was going to do both, right? I mean, fantasy was always my thing, and then sci-fi was just this thing I did to try to rein myself in a little bit. There's less world building. There's, it's just a little less grand in scope. A lot of certainly cyberpunk tends to be more based around the heist, which provides a tighter structure. So I was like, great, okay, I got it. My word count is more disciplined now. So now I'm going to go back to fantasy. And I did, and I showed what I was doing to a really good friend of mine. And her response was, yeah, look, you're good, but why would you settle for being good in a really crowded field when you are really excellent at this other thing? Why don't you just stick with that?
Makes sense.
This is kind of artsy. It's like this other thing, like you're mad, you're angry. Like there's more emotion here. You care about this. And I was like, you're right. So, because fantasy to me is more about like abstract ideas and stuff like that. Cyberpunk is my opportunity to talk about the world we all live in.
Right. Cyberpunk, to me, is very interesting. I came upon it recently, and I'm really drawn to it. I like it. And as a matter of fact, I did some show cover art in cyberpunk style, so I've been playing around with it. But it's interesting. It's a really interesting subject. But at what point did you realize that you needed to stop studying writing and actually start producing work?
That's not too long ago, actually. I would have this habit of trying to I'd queue up a bunch of, say, like YouTube videos on various elements of craft and things like that I would play when I'm on the treadmill, or maybe watch that while I'm eating dinner. And it was after my book got published where I started realizing, well, that was kind of a waste of 15 minutes. I knew all that. And I started to skip until I realized the overwhelming majority of the advice out there is not bad, but it was geared towards people who were earlier in the path than I was. And it's funny because I had gone through something similar to that with weight training. I remember I had an aha moment when I saw this guy who I was watching for tips, and he says, "Hey, I want to show you guys something. I just hit 200 pounds on the bench press." What am I listening to this guy for? Like, I warm up with more than that. I actually know more than him at this point. And it's this weird thing as I get older to constantly make these adjustments to understand I'm not a beginner at things I've been working. I have actually accumulated a certain amount of expertise that it's okay for me to just dive into the work and stop worrying about getting better. Like, the work will provide the practice at this point to bring me forward. Not that I don't have anything to learn. I have plenty, but move a little bit out of the student mindset and a bit more into the doer.
So how much, in your opinion, how much of becoming a writer is talent versus discipline or endurance or anything else?
I'd say about 100%. I mean, talent can give you a little bit of a leg up, but if you don't have the discipline to sit down on, and do it again and again and again and again, then it doesn't matter how talented you are. And if you're skillful, you can come to a certainly a publishable level of prose that is, talent just kind of starts you a little bit higher up on the level, but it doesn't honestly matter if you don't have the work ethic and the dedication.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, and that's really I think a very balanced approach to it. I've heard extremes on both sides. It's either you're 100% talent and there's nothing else that you can do. Either you have it or you don't have it. And then I've also heard that there is a combination of discipline, there is a combination of study, and there is a combination of talent involved in the whole process. But I think you summed it up pretty well, and I appreciate that. Now, you've also said that modern entertainment has serious storytelling problems. What do you think is specifically broken?
I don't think that we're telling stories for the right reason anymore.
Explain that.
I think the easiest example is TV and film, but I think it applies to books as well. Our stories, good stories, I think, no matter the genre, all speak to some kind of universally shared human experience. No matter what happens, it's the way that they affect the characters that really speak to us. When the story is not about that and is instead about producing profit, you don't have a story anymore. You have a product that is masquerading as a story. And so it can hit all of the right beats. You can have 3 acts, and you can have a bleak moment before the climax and all that kind of stuff. But if it's paint by number, then it's not coming from a human place. So it maybe on the surface it's entertaining, and there are parts of it that work, but there's just something about it long term. You're going to feel there's a hollowness in there.
Right. So so the way I look at it, it's a lot of modern movies now and stories, and books. They're technically polished, but
Yes.
they're emotionally empty. There's not substance behind it.
100%. And it's interesting because one of the most common questions that I get about my book, and it goes right to this point, is, well, are you going to write a sequel? It's like, that's where people go. It's like, oh, so you're going to franchise this? Like, no, I didn't do that for that reason. That's not what I wrote the book for.
Right. Not everything has to be a sequel or have a sequel.
I say that constantly. And actually that's one of the first questions I ask when I see a film. is, was this a story that needed to be told?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I do that all the time when I'm watching movies, or and even books too. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. I don't have much time to read these days, but I do enjoy sitting down and reading a good story, and oftentimes I'll see a movie or I'll see something and I'll say, well, why would you make? I mean, obviously, beside the dollar value of it, of just banking in on the name. Does it really need to have a part 2, a part 3, a part 10? I mean, is it necessary to do that? And most of the time, it's not. Sometimes on the rare occasion you'll get a sequel that's better or equivalent to the original. But
they exist.
But it's rare. It's very rare. And I'm gonna throw out something stupid because I had this conversation in doing the prep for the show with one of my producers, and we were talking about this, and the example that was thrown up was like the Amityville Horror. Okay, the Amityville Horror on itself was a great standalone movie. Should not have been touched after that. But yet there are infinite numbers of Amityville sequels that came after that that actually destroyed the franchise. Destroyed the whole concept, the whole book, the whole narrative, the whole story, watered it down so much that you forget that this was actually something that took place in a family's life. They wrecked it. So things like that. If you want to be more cheeky about it, Star Wars. There should not have been more than the 3 original Star Wars movies. And honestly, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this one. 2 and 3 were nowhere near as good as 1. So when I say 2 and 3, I'm talking about Star Wars, the New Hope, and then Empire and Jedi, right? Necessary to tell the whole story, yeah, I'll give it that. But quality of the movie, no, it was fine as it was. My opinion. I'm gonna get hate.
Well, I think the major difference is that A New Hope is a complete story unto itself and can stand on its own. The other 2 are extensions of it and cannot. They must be seen as installments in that broader story. So they can't deliver the same experience.
No, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. And like I said, maybe it was a cheeky kind of an example to use, but it just popped in my head. So, now you also talk about becoming an intentional audience. So what does that actually mean in practice?
It means rejecting passively just taking things in. Where this became very clear to me was back in the day when the very first Transformers movie by Michael Bay came out. And I had a friend of mine say, I wasn't really sure about it. I didn't know that I wanted to see it. And I had several friends all tell me the same thing. Oh, it's a lot of fun. You just have to turn your brain off. And that sank it for me. I was like, oh, well, then obviously I'm not going to spend any time on this. Why would I want to engage with something that requires me to stifle critical thinking? If it's so egregious that if I think about it for 10 seconds, it's going to start to annoy me. Why would I want that?
Absolutely.
But the fact is, mindless entertainment. I mean, we have. I don't know if it's an official thing, but I've at least heard, a lot of Netflix shows referred to as laundry folders now. Like, they assume that you're going to be doing something else while you're watching because it's not interesting enough to hold your attention.
I've never heard that. That's great.
Yeah. This is mainstream now. That's because we're just passively taking it in. We're not really thinking about it. And not to sound too high-minded or anything, but art has always been there to challenge and to expand your consciousness and your thinking and your viewpoints and all that. You should have to pay attention.
I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I prefer to read over watching, because then I have to become part of that story. I have to put myself in that scene, in the story, and to visualize what is going on around me, and try to put faces and voices and create that stuff in my mind as I'm reading the story. So that, totally, man. I see. We're gonna go all night like this. we're just hitting, and we're barely even through it. This is great stuff, man. Great stuff. And along those lines, though, do you think most people realize how much stories actually shape culture and shape worldview?
I tend not to think so. You know what? I'll say I hope not, because if we did, then we should be demanding more from the stories that are out there. So I would hope that the choices that we are collectively making based on what is successful is made from a place, without awareness, that it's not a conscious choice. It's what's being given to us, and we're okay with it because we're not really thinking of the full implications. I was completely unaware of it until I had the opportunity once to talk to Orson Scott Card, and he was on a kind of a campaign to introduce science fiction and fantasy into the educational curriculum of primary education. Okay. Whereas, it's traditionally, traditional literature. And look, I'm an English major, so no hate on Shakespeare and all that. That's good stuff. But yeah. His point, and I never forgot it, was these two genres are the only two in which you are going to find protagonists who are willing to lose their families, their material possessions, their livelihoods, maybe even their lives, for nothing more tangible than principle. And if we want to be teaching our kids things, why wouldn't we want to expose them to stories that glorify standing up for what is right? Because you don't find that in traditional literature.
Right.
I said, that's a great idea. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Wow. I hadn't thought about that. That's really interesting. Wow. So then for you, what separates a story people just consume from one that actually stays with them?
I think it has to come from that human experience. No matter what else happens, it has to start and somehow be central to some deeply personal thing that happens with the protagonist. So, since we were talking about Star Wars, I'll give you a quick example. I remember I saw the second prequel in theaters, and it's maybe 10 minutes into the movie when Obi-Wan Kenobi is flying through the city. I think it was Coruscant, hanging on to an assassin drone. He's hundreds of stories in the air, and it's all exciting and everything, except I don't know anybody aside from him. I don't know what's really happening. I don't know why, and I have no reason to care. And it's not affecting him really. It's all spectacle. But there's nothing at stake. So who cares? That's what you were talking about, that technically proficient thing that's masquerading as a story. All they needed to do was introduce something that was both personal to him and something that was human, that I could then feel for him in that way. And now I care about what's happening and I'm in it. And we don't have that very much, but that's, I think, what the core of a really good story is.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great example too. I didn't think about that one. That's a good example. And you see that spread throughout all these modern movies, and it is getting to be a little bit pathetic. Like, I don't even like to go to the movies anymore. I don't. What was the last movie I actually went to go see in a theater? I can't even tell you when the last time I went to a movie theater.
Me either. I watched the ones from like the 80s and 90s now, and it's amazing how different they feel.
Great point. And I'm glad you said that, because you know what I find myself watching more and more on the streaming services? Movies from the 40s, the 60s, even in some into the 70s. Some really great stories. Things that just really capture your attention. You become part of it. You feel it. You don't get that today. Today, it's all about that, again, that technical polish. It's what can we do to the jump scare? What can we do for the nothing's atmospheric anymore. There's no scene setting anymore. It's just from one jump scare to the next jump scare. And I reference jump scares because I'm a horror person. I love those types of movies. So it's just that there's no story behind it. Why are you doing this? Why is this happening? Much like you said with Star Wars. Why is this actually taking place? And so honestly, I blame social media for that. I do. I look at social media as, you get these short little hits, and people don't have the attention span anymore to sit through a movie and actually think about what it is that they're watching and try to piece the movie together in their own minds as they're watching it. And I think that, and I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, but I think that social media has really shortened people's attention span to the point where actual meaningful storytelling is just impossible.
I'll actually double down on that point and say that not only has it condensed our attention span or contracted it, I think that it has glorified spectacle over genuine human connection, which also leads to the hollowing out of stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And you find the same thing in music too. Listen to music today, and the way, and I'm not talking about music as far as the orchestrations go, or where they digitally put it all together, but I'm talking about the storytelling and the writing. You go back.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was binge listening to the Allman Brothers. I haven't listened to the Allman Brothers in a while. But you listen to their songs, and every single song is a story being told. Every one, whether it's instrumentally or whether it's lyrically, there's a story being told. The same thing, in other bands of that era and that genre. Today, I mean, what is the point of what it's either whoring around, gang lifestyle, or I can't even think of another term for it. It's just wasting time.
Yes, you're looking for the earworm.
Yeah.
I completely. In the past I had struggled with depression, and so one of the songs that was very kind of cathartic for me, because I felt like it was the most. It was a powerful expression of what it is to be in that state, was Metallica's Fade to Black.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
I mean, as someone who had been in a melancholic state, like that's what I'm talking about. That's that expression of human experience. It's not, I'm going out to a party and, red Solo cup and all this other, stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. No, I want to get into your book. I want to get into Daemones ex Machina. Okay.
Very good.
So for the people that are hearing about this for the first time, what is it really about underneath the surface plot?
So ultimately, it's about personal choice and the consequences of it, and it puts a spotlight on that because it gives a tremendous amount of personal agency to people who didn't realize they hadn't had much because they were corporate drones. They much like most of us, they went to a job, they did what they were told, and then that was it. Go home, wash, rinse, repeat. Now, they were paramilitary operatives, so their day job's a little bit different than mine. I'm not blowing up cars and kidnapping people, but it was still, they never thought about what they were doing. They were just doing whatever the mission docket said. Things go wrong. They start having to make decisions on their own. Suddenly, they find that they have the power to make decisions, and there's ramifications for everything that they do. I supercharge this because the thing that gives them agency is demonic contracts. So there's a very heavy weight involved with all of their decisions. At first, they approach it very operationally, like everything else, but they start to see that there are consequences to every single thing that they do. Ultimately, that's what it's about, and I wanted to try to put a spotlight on that. That's a position we're all in. The way that the world works right now doesn't really feel like that a lot of times. But just by giving consent to the way that the world is a choice, and it has ramifications.
Mm-hmm. Now you've hinted in this that the demons in the story work on multiple levels: psychological, spiritual, technological. Was that the intent from the beginning?
It honestly, the intent from the beginning was, there are three protagonists. Each of them has a demonic companion. I designed the companion to be something that would exacerbate their own personal flaw, kind of like Greek tragedy. They all have something wrong with them. I mean, they're wrestling with inner demons. But how that manifested kind of came out as I developed the story. But their fundamental purpose was to challenge the individual characters with their own shortcomings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, why combine cyberpunk with supernatural and metaphysical themes?
Because I thought that traditional cyberpunk is something I very much enjoy, but it had a couple of things that I wanted to do differently. One is it's a little bit, as a genre, a little bit nihilistic. Like, this is the world and it sucks, and deal with it. And here's how you deal with it. Maybe.
Yeah, classical cyberpunk is all about corporate control, technology, dehumanization. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's no fixing it.
Right.
Maybe you can get yours, but there's no making the world a better place. Fundamentally, I don't like that idea. I can understand that can certainly be over romanticized, but I didn't want to actually dwell in hopelessness. The other piece of that is that cyberpunk is oftentimes very interested in the technology, the tools, the software, the infrastructure. And I wanted to write something that was much more human-centric. And so what I found myself the position I found myself in was one of sort of human essence versus this institutional juggernaut of setting. And just on a random brainstorming session, I was just out on a walk, and I was trying to think of how can I represent human essence, like what is fundamentally human. And I had this weird idea of folklore, the sort of metaphysical infrastructure that we created prior to advanced technology. I said, well, what if I brought that in then? Say like it was never gone, it's just buried. And so the demons exist here not to give the people cool powers, but because they are specifically a type of infrastructure that cannot be mass produced, and that cannot be you can't file the serial numbers off. So the major corporation in this book can't batch print demonic contracts and then have the entire department sign them. They need to be individually negotiated one-on-one, and each one of those is going to be particular to that person. It restores their personhood. And so it felt very, it was the direct contrast to that cyberpunk infrastructure that I was looking for.
Oh, okay, I understand now. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, what themes what themes, ideas are you trying to I guess explore that modern science fiction tends to ignore?
So I do a lot of what a lot of cyberpunk does. I think that I'm pointing at a lot of the same things that cyberpunk calls out. Massive corporate control, to the point where it eclipses governmental power, the commodification of human beings, wage slavery, all that kind of stuff. But I'm not presenting it just as spectacle or backdrop. What I'm trying to do is present it in such a way that the book says this is bad, and it's also not okay. It's not just, oh gee, look at what happened. It's like, no, this is wrong, and somebody really ought to do something about it. Like, we should stop being okay with this.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, man, I can't believe that 45 minutes has gone by already. So I want to pivot away for a second. I want to get into about a controversial subject here, and that's AI. All right. and it's interesting because I've had a string of guests on the show specifically about AI stuff, and everybody has a little bit of a different take on it. And so I'm really curious where you are in this. Do you think that AI will eventually replace human authors?
With the current setup, meaning LLMs, no. And I say that as not just off the cuff. Like I've been looking into that a lot. And my experience with it and what I've uncovered is that the thing about LLMs is that they can produce that kind of very shiny, technically proficient wrapper that we were talking about. They can produce product. I think that they could. But there's always going to be something a little off about them because an LLM only understands the text. They don't understand where that text comes from. LLMs don't have sight. They cannot feel, like touch. They don't know what anything tastes like. They can only read the descriptions that humans have created. And so all of their stuff is going to be a little uncanny valley, I think. And I don't care how much data you feed them, they're missing that raw experience that creates really authentic writing. So I think that we can get plenty of high quality AI slop, as far as fiction goes, but I think there's always going to be this corner of the market of real stuff that AI, at least a large language model, is not going to be able to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a fantastic point, actually, because well, actually, before I even get into it, LLM, you referenced it a few times. For people who don't know what LLM is, can you break that down?
Sure. A large language model is, to oversimplify it, is a gigantic database, right? They pour in data from everywhere, the internet, Reddit posts, every book that they can get their hands on, they put it in there. And the large language model is this algorithm that looks for patterns in the language, which words are most often strung together. And from there, it creates a probability map so that it can then take these words and put them together in what seems to be an appropriate sequence, which it then feeds back to you based on requests. So it doesn't actually know what it's saying. What you're getting is an algorithmically assembled list of characters and words. So and the probability engine is pretty good because it makes sense when it comes back, but that's ultimately what it is.
Right. So if you think about it, it's kind of like a Chat GPT thing. That would be considered an LLM, correct?
It is.
Right, because you can feed Chat GPT something, and like for example, I play around with Chat GPT, and we have conversations, quote unquote conversations, and it tells you what you want to hear, no matter how no matter how often you say, no, I want you to be honest with me and tell me yes or no on this, it will never give you a definitive, this isn't going to work, because it's going to give you generalizations. It's going to give you, it's going to make it as sweet and gentle as possible, and kind of stoke your ego a little bit, which is problematic, which is because so many people are getting duped, and even Sam Altman just recently, I saw an article on Impact News that this latest iteration of ChatGPT actually scares him, which is very interesting. I'll send you the link to the article if you're interested in reading it.
Absolutely.
Because he said, without getting into the whole article, because I don't have it directly in front of me, so I can tell you exactly what he said word for word, but basically that realization came to him when they rolled out the latest ChatGPT. I think it's 5.5 or something like that. And they asked it to plan and organize its own launch party, and they said that it went in a direction that they had not anticipated, and that actually scared them. So that's like the concern. It's like how much of AI is going to eventually take over functionality for human beings. You know, I mean, even if AI can imitate writing structure, you know, will it ever replicate lived human experience?
And so the thing that baffles me about it is, why do we want it to? You know, there's a massive push to implement AI in the workplace and you know, supplant a lot of workers and cut things, you know, cut workforce down, trim operating costs and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I keep coming back to was a Sam Altman quote. He was on stage and he said, "I think it's really possible that AI will be the end of human civilization. But in the meantime, it's going to make some really great companies." And I just couldn't get over how aberrant that value system seemed to me. It's like, you're saying this as if that's a good trade-off.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I got when you just said it. It's like, what a flippant response to a question. That's just that alone should scare you. That this is the way these people who are creating this stuff are thinking. Well, in the long term, we'll make some good money on it, but the rest of you are screwed. you know? And I mean, like I had a guest on Wednesday night, and we were talking about AI, of course. And you know, question is, how soon before we get Skynet?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's right around the corner. I think there is something called Skynet in the defense system, but it's
that I didn't know. But I did know that they've run a few different AI models through war games, and they all wind up just nuking the planet.
Yeah, and they're okay with this.
They're okay with it. Yeah.
You know, before you know it, you're going to have T-800s stomping on crushed skulls all over the place. It's going to be ridiculous. You know, I mean, and we laugh about it, but the possibility of the direction that this thing is going and how quickly it's going is it should be really troubling. And I guess one of the bigger questions is, when do we get to a point where we look at it and say, okay, I think we've gone too far before it's too late?
Right. How much is enough?
Right. And it's well, I guess in relation to it, I mean, do you think that convenience culture is training people to value, because AI is fast, it'll get you what you need really fast, and we live in a culture that thrives on convenience. I guess that's the question in and of itself. You know, how far are we gonna let this go?
We could. Funny enough, I think we could wind up in two, I think, equally nightmarish situations, but very different. So one of them is the world of Terminator, right? The other one is the world of WALL-E, where we're all just like these enormously obese people sitting in you know, lounge chairs that
Blobs.
You know, the food is being brought to us and AI is taking care of everything, and we have lost any functional capacity to do anything.
Yeah. I can't see anything in between that, to be honest with you. But what happens to culture if human creativity becomes optional?
I think what would wind up happening, and I could see it, which is very sad to me, is that human culture starts looking like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. It's, you know, because what LLMs do is they don't create anything, they reconstitute. And so if we're leaning on them more and more, then stuff is just going to be recycled over recycled. I mean, we're already seeing it. When's the last time you heard of a new movie coming out as opposed to a reboot, prequel, sequel, something that's derived from something else?
Great point. Yeah. Everything's just a rehash of something that's already been done.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go that way, but I was just thinking that, you know, and they're being horribly redone. You know, they're just loading it up with politics as opposed to the actual story, and they're just force feeding you someone's political opinion on things, and that doesn't entertain. And I think that's why a lot of these, you know, quote unquote woke movies are failing. And these woke stories and that you're getting are failing, is because nobody wants to be force-fed someone else's political opinion. And, you know, tell a story. You don't have to insert your politics into it.
Or if you really do want to, at least don't make that the engine of the story.
Yeah,
use the story to show, you know, some political thing that you want to do. But if you're just gussying it up and giving a sermon in a different format, people don't like being preached to.
Exactly. So we're going to start wrapping this thing up here already. I can't believe that. But so what do you think is the biggest lie aspiring creatives tell themselves?
That when they are inspired, it will just come. That it's, art is not work. It's just the muse just comes and, gives you a big sloppy kiss, and then you just can't, you can't stop.
Right. Yeah. Now, do you think that people spend too much time consuming creativity and not enough time creating?
Almost certainly. I personally don't know a whole lot of people who do a lot of creation. And it's not to say that everybody has to, right? Like, there's people who just don't have any kind of artistic calling, and that's fine. But I would like to see more critical evaluation from all of us. I think we as a people would do much better to start saying, hey, this was dumb.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have one final question for you. If someone that's watching, listening right now, spent years wanting to create something meaningful, but keeps, I don't know, hesitating, maybe overthinking it, or even doubting themselves, what would you tell them?
Just do it. You don't have to do it right. Just do it. You can always redo it. Hemingway famously said the first draft is crap. So just start. Starting is the hardest part. Once you get going, nothing will be as hard as starting from nothing.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point. Great point. So Russell, where can people go to find out more about you and about your work, sir?
I have a website, russellandersbooks.com. You can find me on Instagram, Russell Anders Author. Also on Facebook as Russell Anders. And my book is available anywhere you can buy books online, but there are links to buy through my website also. That's me. I don't have a huge social media presence, but I try to make an occasional post now and again.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. I hardly ever go on socials. I hate social media. I really do. The only things I put up there has to do with the show, so I don't waste time out otherwise. But Russell, thank you so much, man. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed this, and I was looking forward to this too. Because I know we had to move some things around a couple of times to get our show in together. And man, it did not disappoint. Really well thought out. Great conversation. Really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to getting into the book. I do need to get a copy of it because the subject matter really does intrigue me. So looking forward to that. And maybe once we get the book, we'll have you back on again. We can actually talk more specifically about things in the book.
I would love to. This time has just flown by for me.
Didn't it? It's ridiculous. Great. All right. Well, I'm going to throw you backstage, and then I'm going to wrap this thing up, and I'll touch base with you right there. And again, thank you so much, Russell. I really, really appreciate you taking the time out to do this with us today. And just hang out backstage, and we'll be right with you. All right.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks. Russell Anders. Make sure you check out his book. What a great conversation, right? I mean, wow. I'm telling you, stick around with this show, folks. You're going to learn some things. You really are. You really are. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being honest. We really do try to bring the best quality guests we can get. And, man, Russell did not disappoint at all. Great conversation. All right, so final thoughts here. Well, I should do shout-outs first. Executive producers Wayne Rankin, Rosanna Rankin, Carolina Jimenez, Marissa Lee, the inestimable Anonymous Angela, and John Seeley. Thank you so very much, guys, for your support and everything that we've been doing here. And now, folks, these people, they donate their time, their talent, their treasure. We call it the 3 T's, part of the value for value system that we use here. And simply meaning the value for value is if you are receiving anything of value from the content that we're putting out here, all we're asking is that you return that value to us in the form of a donation. And again, that could be your time, your talent, or your treasure. These folks donate their time, their talent, and their treasure to help us put together these shows. And I really appreciate it, and really couldn't do a lot of what we do without their help. So if you want to find out more about how you can get involved with what we're doing here, just head over to the website, joerooz.com, and go to the support page, joerooz.com/support, and check out all the different ways that you can help us through donations. All right, and we would really, really appreciate that. All right, now, final thoughts. You know, tonight's conversation with Russell reminds us that stories are never really just entertainment. Stories shape cultures, they shape values, they shape how people see the world and how they see themselves. And maybe that's why so much modern entertainment feels, I guess, disconnected is probably the best word right now, because really, like we touched on tonight, spectacle has replaced substance. Speed has replaced meaning. But you know something, folks? Human creativity still matters. Human experience still matters. And, you know, maybe the responsibility falls on both creators and the audience to engage more intentionally with the stories that we tell and the stories that we consume. Because you know something, folks? Stories leave tracks. They leave tracks, and they leave tracks behind long after the credits roll. All right, just something to think about. And we can thank Tilmer Wright for the tracks, because that's his baby right there. And yeah, I stole it. Sue me. He won. He's a good guy. All right, folks. Well, you know, I really do appreciate you guys being here with us tonight. Please don't forget to head over to the website, joerooz.com. joerooz.com. Open the contact section. Send us over a message. Let us know what you think. info@joerooz.com. And folks, listen, don't forget, make Texas independent again. Go podcasting. Keep a steady stride. More importantly, though, keep talking. We will see you guys next time right here on The Joe Rooz Show. Good night, folks.